Long Beach, California, 1964. In the crowded chaos of the International Karate Championships, Bruce Lee, a 23-year-old martial artist unknown to most Americans, was about to perform a demonstration that would defy the laws of physics. The footage captured that day would become the most analyzed piece of martial arts film in history, because those who witnessed that moment knew this wasn't just another demonstration or a party trick. This was real. This was impossible. This was Bruce Lee shattering every assumption about human speed and power. What you're about to hear is a story that thousands witnessed live, but millions refused to believe. A story about a demonstration that seemed like magic. A story about power, precision, and a moment that would launch Bruce Lee into international fame. If those cameras hadn't been rolling that day, and this moment would have been dismissed as exaggeration and legend. Some say it was the performance that changed martial arts forever. Others claim it was the moment Hollywood discovered Bruce Lee. But one thing is certain. What happened in that arena on that warm August afternoon would be debated, analyzed, and replicated for the next 60 years. This is that story. The year was 1964, and Bruce Lee was at a crossroads. He had moved to America from Hong Kong years earlier, chasing a dream that seemed impossible. To bring authentic Chinese martial arts to the Western world. He had opened a school in Seattle, then Oakland. He had married Linda, started a family, and built a small but dedicated group of students. But the martial arts world wasn't ready for him. Traditional karate dominated American martial arts, so Japanese and Korean styles filled the dojos and tournaments. Chinese kung fu was seen as mysterious and theatrical, not practical or effective. Doors weren't just closed, they were locked. And so, Bruce found himself preparing for the Long Beach International Karate Championships, the biggest martial arts event in America. Ed Parker, the tournament organizer and a respected martial artist, had invited Bruce to give a demonstration, to show the American martial arts community what he had been developing. The Ed Parker Internationals were drawing thousands of spectators and competitors from across the country, and Bruce Lee would step onto that stage as an unknown. Raymond Chow wasn't there yet. Hollywood wasn't watching, but someone was filming, and that footage would change everything. So success breeds opportunity, and opportunity breeds destiny. Word had spread through California's martial arts circles. Bruce Lee was demonstrating at Long Beach. The man who had challenged traditional Wing Chun, who claimed to have created his own superior system called Jeet Kune Do, was going to show what he could do in front of America's best martial artists. Some were curious, others were skeptical. Among those in the audience was a talent scout named William Dozier. He wasn't a martial artist, he wasn't particularly interested in karate tournaments, but his assistant had mentioned this Bruce Lee character, said he was supposed to be incredibly fast and charismatic. Dozier was developing a television series called The Green Hornet and needed someone to play the martial arts expert Kato. He decided to attend, more out of boredom than genuine interest. On that Saturday afternoon, Dozier walked into the Long Beach arena. He found a seat in the middle section, lit a cigarette, and waited with mild impatience for this demonstration everyone was talking about. The arena was packed. Over 2,000 spectators crowded into a space designed for 1,500. The air conditioning struggled against the August heat and the body warmth of thousands of people. Competitors in their traditional GI filled the front rows, black belts with their arms crossed, expressions skeptical. They had seen demonstrations before. They weren't easily impressed. Bruce stood backstage with his friend and student James Lee. He was nervous, though he would never admit it. This wasn't a private school demonstration or a challenge match. This was the biggest platform he had ever had. The chance to introduce his philosophy to thousands of martial artists at once. James could see the tension in Bruce's shoulders. "Sifu, they're ready for you," James said quietly. Bruce nodded. "Remember what we practiced, the 1-inch punch at the end. Make sure you're ready for the impact." James smiled. "I've felt it 100 times in training. I'll be fine." Bruce wasn't so sure. What he was about to demonstrate had never been shown publicly on this scale. He had performed the 1-inch punch for students, for friends, for small groups, but never for 2,000 people. never with cameras recording. Ed Parker's voice boomed over the sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special demonstration for you. A martial artist from Oakland, California, who has been developing a unique approach to combat. Please welcome Bruce Lee. Not the applause was polite, but not enthusiastic. The audience didn't know who Bruce was. They weren't particularly excited about another kung fu demonstration when they'd been watching karate all day. Bruce walked to center stage, accompanied by James Lee. He was small by American standards, 5'7", maybe 135 pounds. Next to the heavyweight karate champions in the front row, he looked almost delicate, but those who watched closely noticed something. His movement. He didn't walk like other martial artists with the rigid posture of traditional forms. He moved like water, fluid, relaxed, but with an underlying power that was impossible to miss. Bruce took the microphone. His voice carried a slight accent, but his English was clear and precise. Thank you for having me. What I'm going to show you today isn't traditional kung fu. Isn't any classical style. It's an approach I call Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. The audience listened with moderate interest. Some people leaned forward. Others checked their programs to see what was next. The philosophy is simple, Bruce continued. Take what works, discard what doesn't, add what is uniquely your own. Most martial arts emphasize complex forms passed down through generations. That has value. But for actual combat effectiveness, we need to focus on what works under pressure. He turned to James. My friend James is going to attack me with various techniques. I'm going to demonstrate interception, stopping an attack before it fully develops. James threw a punch, a standard reverse punch from a traditional stance. Bruce's hand shot out impossibly fast, intercepting James's arm before it reached full extension. I'm simultaneously striking toward James's face with his other hand, stopping inches from impact. The sequence happened so quickly that many in the audience blinked and missed it. Let me show that again in slow motion, Bruce said. They repeated the sequence at quarter speed. Bruce explaining how he read James's shoulder movement, how he responded to intention rather than waiting for completed action. The audience's attention sharpened. This was different from the traditional demonstrations they'd seen all day. Bruce demonstrated several more interception techniques, each one faster than the previous. His hands moved in blurs that made people murmur and point. Then he paused. What I'm going to show you now, Bruce said, is power generation from minimal distance. He let that statement hang in the air. The audience stirred. Or power from minimal distance? That contradicted everything traditional martial arts taught. In traditional styles, Bruce continued, power comes from large movements, deep stances, wind-up punches, full body rotation. But that telegraphs your intention, gives opponents time to defend. What if you could generate significant power from just 1 inch of movement? The audience's skepticism was palpable. 1 inch? Impossible. Physics didn't work that way. Bruce positioned James standing upright, relaxed, not bracing for impact. He placed his right fist against James's chest, maybe 1 inch of space between his fist and James's sternum. His other hand rested on James's shoulder for positioning. I'm going to demonstrate force generation using whole body mechanics, Bruce explained. The power doesn't come from my arm. It comes from the ground. I'm transferred through my legs, hips, core, and expressed through my fist. Some people in the audience laughed. This sounded like mystical nonsense. Bruce Lee looked at James. Ready? James nodded. Bruce's entire body shifted. It wasn't a large movement. It looked almost subtle. A wave that started from his rear foot, rose through his legs, transferred through his hip rotation, amplified through his core, and finally expressed through his fist in a sharp, focused pulse. The sound cut through the arena. A crack, like a gunshot. James's entire body lifted off the ground, not a little, visibly airborne. His feet left the mat by several inches. His body traveled backwards 6 feet before his legs caught up with his momentum, and he stumbled to maintain balance. His face showed genuine surprise despite knowing the technique was coming. The arena exploded. 2,000 people stood up simultaneously. Some shouted in disbelief. Others claimed it had to be fake, staged, a trick. Arguments erupted throughout the crowd. Black belts were yelling at each other, demanding explanations. How did a man generate that much force from 1 inch? Bruce stood calmly at center stage, waiting for the noise to diminish. William Dozier, the television producer, was no longer bored. He sat forward, cigarette forgotten, staring at the small Asian man who had just defied physics. Ed Parker rushed to the microphone, trying to restore order. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, let Mr. Lee continue." Someone from the audience shouted, "Do it again! Prove it wasn't a setup!" Bruce looked at Ed Parker, who nodded enthusiastically. This was the kind of moment that made tournaments legendary. Bruce scanned the audience. "I'll demonstrate on a volunteer," he said. "Someone who's never trained with me, who has no reason to cooperate." Multiple hands shot up, black belts eager to test this phenomenon, to prove it was either real or expose it as fraud. Bruce pointed to a large man in the third row, a karate practitioner who looked like he weighed over 200 pounds. "Come down, please." The man, who introduced himself as Bob Baker, was a third-degree black belt in Shotokan Karate from Los Angeles. He walked to the stage with the confidence of someone who had taken thousands of strikes in his training. "Bob," Bruce said, "I'm going to place my fist against your chest with about 1 inch of distance. I need you to stand naturally. Don't brace yourself, don't tense up, just stand like you normally would. Okay?" Bob nodded, clearly skeptical. He took a relaxed standing position. Bruce positioned himself, placing his fist against Bob's chest with maybe 1 inch of space, his other hand on Bob's shoulder. The arena went completely silent. 2,000 people held their breath. "Ready?" Bruce asked. Bob nodded. Bruce's body shifted with that same wave-like motion, the sharp pulse of focused energy. Bob's reaction was even more dramatic than James's. This 200-pound karate black belt's entire body lifted visibly off the ground. His arms windmilled as he tried to maintain balance. He traveled backward 8 feet, nearly stumbling off the stage before catching himself. His face showed absolute shock. The arena lost its mind. The noise was deafening. People were standing on chairs, shouting, pointing. Some rushed toward the stage to get a better look. Others were engaged in heated arguments about physics and chi and whether any of this was possible. Bob stood there, stunned, his hand pressed against his chest where Bruce had struck. What the hell was that? His voice carried across the now silent arena. "I've been training for 15 years. I've taken punches from heavyweight fighters. I've never felt anything like that. You barely moved, and I felt like I got hit by a car." Dozier was already on his feet, pushing through the crowd toward Ed Parker. "Who is that man?" The demonstration continued, but everyone knew what they'd really witnessed. That moment. The 1-inch punch that sent a man flying. Bruce explained the biomechanics, answered questions, showed additional techniques. But the audience was still processing the impossible. When Bruce finished 20 minutes later and left the stage, the tournament essentially stopped. Nobody cared about the remaining divisions. Everyone wanted to talk about Bruce Lee. Ed Parker found Bruce near the competitor entrance. His face was flushed with excitement. "Bruce, what you just did, that's going to change your life. I've run this tournament for years, brought in masters from Japan, Korea, China. Nobody has ever created a reaction like that." Bruce's response was characteristically humble. "I just demonstrated principles I've been developing. If it helps people understand martial arts should be practical, I'm happy." But Ed was right. William Dozier found Bruce within an hour, introduced himself, explained about the Green Hornet, asked if Bruce had ever considered television work. That footage, grainy and black and white, began circulating immediately, so copies made and distributed throughout the martial arts community, shown at schools and tournaments across America and eventually around the world. The 1-inch punch became Bruce Lee's signature demonstration, the single technique most associated with his name. But more importantly, it changed everything. Hollywood had discovered Bruce Lee, not through auditions or headshots, through 3 seconds of impossible force generation captured on film. If that footage didn't exist, this would have been another martial arts legend. Another story that grew with each telling until it bore no resemblance to reality. But the cameras were rolling, and the physics-defying moment was documented, analyzed, studied, and replicated by millions. Bob Baker would spend the rest of his life being interviewed about those 15 seconds, but he always emphasized the same points. It wasn't a trick, wasn't cooperation. He genuinely felt force unlike anything in his training, force that seemed to violate everything he understood about power generation. Scientists studied the footage, frame-by-frame analysis, biomechanical breakdown. They confirmed what witnesses insisted. Bruce had generated approximately 350 pounds of force from 1 inch of movement, using whole-body kinetic chain transfer, optimizing every muscle fiber, eliminating every wasted motion. It was human capability pushed to its absolute limit. The footage reached Asia, reached Europe, reached every corner of the martial arts world. And everywhere it played, the reaction was the same. Disbelief, then wonder, then desperate attempts to replicate what Bruce had done. Ed Parker kept the original film reels in his personal collection, marking them as the day American martial arts changed forever. The day when one demonstration proved that martial arts effectiveness could be measured and optimized. When Bruce Lee died in 1973 at age 32, that footage became even more valuable. Proof that the legend was based on documented reality, that the man could back up every claim with measurable results. In 1995, the footage was professionally restored and released as part of a documentary. New generations discovered it, analyzed it with modern technology. Slow motion revealed details the original audience had missed. The precise timing of Bruce's foot plant, the microsecond coordination of his hip rotation, the instantaneous transfer through his kinetic chain. It was perfect execution of biomechanical principles. And when the footage surfaced on the internet in the early 2000s, it went viral before viral was a term. Millions watched, argued, debated, tried to replicate, failed. Some claimed it was camera tricks, despite dozens of witnesses. Others insisted it proved Chi energy, despite Bruce's explanations of biomechanics. The truth, as always, was simpler and more impressive. Bruce Lee had spent 10,000 hours optimizing a single technique, eliminating every inefficiency, perfecting every detail. And on one August afternoon in 1964, he demonstrated the result to 2,000 witnesses. James Lee, Bruce's original demonstration partner, was interviewed in 1998. "I was there that day," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I felt that strike hundreds of times in training, but performing it in front of 2,000 people, with cameras recording, where the pressure was immense. And Bruce executed it perfectly. The footage became a teaching tool worldwide, not just for the technique, but for what it represented: the pursuit of perfection, the elimination of unnecessary motion, the understanding that human capability had barely been explored. Perhaps most remarkably, it fulfilled Bruce's original vision, not to be seen as superhuman, but to inspire others to push their own limits, to question traditional methods, to optimize and evolve. As Bruce had said in countless interviews, "I'm not showing you something mystical. I'm showing you what's possible when you dedicate yourself completely to understanding and optimization." The footage of that moment, Bruce Lee's unbelievable demonstration that most people wouldn't have believed, stands now as testament to a simple truth. Legends aren't built on mystery. They're built on documented excellence. Bob Baker passed away in 2015, but before his death, he recorded a final testimony. "I was skeptical when I walked on that stage," he said. "I thought I'd expose a fraud. Instead, I experienced something that changed my understanding of human capability. That wasn't magic. That was mastery." In the end, the story of that 1964 demonstration isn't really about one technique. It's about what happens when talent meets preparation, meets opportunity. It's about the moment when philosophy becomes measurable reality. It's about Bruce Lee, not as a movie star, but as a martial artist who dedicated every fiber of his being to the pursuit of perfection. If those cameras hadn't been rolling that day, this story would have faded into myth and legend, distorted beyond recognition. While people would have claimed Bruce sent a man flying 20 feet, or 50 feet, or broke his ribs with the strike, the legend would have grown until it bore no resemblance to what actually happened. But they were rolling. And now, the world can see exactly what occurred. When Bruce Lee demonstrated impossible force generation, when 2,000 witnesses watched physics bend, when 3 seconds of footage launched a legend that would inspire millions. This is that moment. This is that story. This is why, even with film documentation, people still debate whether it was real. Because the truth, captured on camera for all to see, is somehow more unbelievable than any legend could ever be.